Ixtel prepared for the journey into the dangerous green hell, the vast jungle surrounding Tickle. This journey was not like normal pilgrimages to sacred caves or pilgrimages to other temples. This time, she rode atop a jaguar-shaped throne on a golden chariot pulled by 4 fierce jaguars. Her father, High Priest Kukoken, had ordered the finest chariot in the kingdom, fit for the royal princesses, to be given to her, along with 20 elite soldiers to protect her. All this was because of the nature of their journey. Instead of going to the lush southern lowlands or the beautiful Pacific coast, they were headed deep into the uncharted regions of the green hell beyond the borders of the empire, deeper into the jungle than anyone had ever dared. In these parts, monstrous beasts roamed, wild tribes lived, and evil spirits lurked. There, all Maya pilgrims had perished without returning, so the preparations took many days. As the king himself was to depart for the war in the south, Queen Itzamna took charge of the final preparations for her daughter. As she watched Ixtel put on her travel clothes, she felt a sharp ache in her chest. The garment was woven from green feathers, representing the color of the jungle and her daughter's own hair. The white cotton underneath was stained with natural dyes of vines and flowers. And most importantly, her daughter had taken her own veil and tied it around her head. Yet there was more meaning behind the veil. The feather ornament on it symbolized the alliance between the Eagle and Jaguar clans, destined to unite and lead the Maya people. The queen hoped that the prophecy was fulfilled, but feared that her daughter's pilgrimage might be a suicide mission. "Be careful, my little moon," she said to Ixtel, tears welling up in her eyes. "Take care of yourself. Your father and we are counting on you." She touched the intricate silver pendant around her daughter's neck, shaped like 2 crossed spears with jewels at the tips, meant to ward off evil spirits in the jungle. Ixtel hugged her mother, the embrace of a princess and a queen. But when they parted, the queen noticed the firm resolve in her daughter's eyes, no longer a girl, but a woman ready to take her destiny upon herself. Later, as the golden chariot moved forward with hundreds of soldiers and thousands of retainers, Izike watched the city disappear into the distance. At first, it was a slow march. Her father's team of runners went ahead to report back to Tickle every 3 days. However, they soon caught up and overtook the convoy. With great efforts, they managed to get through the thick bush, move across large swampy areas, and sail across tributaries of the great Usumacinta River. The dense foliage, damp soil, biting insects, and humid heat of the tropics made her skin crawl. But Ixtel endured. Finally, after nearly 3 weeks, they arrived at their destination. It was a clearing in the jungle, the size of the central plaza of Tickle, with an altar made of crude stones in the middle. And right before them lay a grave covered in broken pottery, animal bones, and wilted flowers. No human skeleton was inside, just a single black obsidian arrowhead lying inside the grave. "Here lies the first sacrifice to the god of death," one of the attendants read from a piece of bark. "The boy, M, son of the chief of the wing dance, taken by a jaguar spirit at the age of 16. Before anyone could speak, the young prince raised his arm. "We waste precious time," he said, drawing his sword. "The jaguar spirit. May its lair be here. Let us kill it." But Ixtel stepped forward, stopping him from attacking. "Do not be hasty," she said. "This is not a time for battle. This is a place of death. Here, a life was ended. Perhaps there is a soul trapped here, afraid and alone. We should try to help such a creature." Ken looked at her, his expression softening somewhat. "There are humans around here," he said, indicating 3 sets of footprints near the grave, "and none of them are yours. So whatever lives in this place, it won't welcome us kindly. Come with me. We'll hunt down the beasts." She laid a hand on the hilt of her own dagger, her gaze fixed on the trees. "I am Shadow Eye, son of the king. Whoever hides here should be glad that I am merciful. Otherwise, his soul will join the boy in the grave." While the troops spread out in closed ranks, Izike walked towards the grave. She took the obsidian arrowhead from the grave and held it over the altar. "Great jaguar spirit," she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. "Do not harm us. Only my father's bloodline can see you. I am the blood of Ixtel, child of Cook. You have chosen me. Show yourself to me." A rustle in the trees. Then suddenly, a huge jaguar burst forth, growling fiercely. Its fur was the color of midnight. Its eyes glowed red. Its fangs glistened like polished bone, like its prey. Izike froze momentarily, fear coursing through her, but she held her ground, staring defiantly at the beast. "Show yourself," she said again. The jaguar circled her, sensing both danger and curiosity. Then, as if coming out of its fur, a handsome young man emerged, dressed in the pelt of a jaguar. He bore the emblem of the jaguar clan. His face was painted with white lines and dots, and a headband adorned with green feathers rested on his head. "Who are you?" asked Prince Khan, unsheathing his sword. "I am the jaguar spirit," the young man replied calmly, "but I am also son of the chief of the winged ants. When I was a living person, I felt betrayed and alone. I thought my own father wanted me dead, so when the jaguar spirit offered me a chance to gain strength, I accepted. Now I live on, but at the same time, I am trapped here. I hear the cries of the lost. I feel the pain of the dying. Every day, I feel myself growing weaker. Help me! Break the curse." He pointed to the obsidian arrowhead. "With this artifact, I can suck your souls out of your body. My arrows never miss their mark." Izike stared at the arrowhead and understood. She took the arrowhead from the altar, sheathed it in a special pouch, and handed it back to En. "Give this to your father," she said. "Tell him that the seed of life is kept safe in Tickle. We will honor you and your tribe, and the curse of the divine seed will be lifted. We will never forget you." After hearing her words, smiled and disappeared into the jungle along with his jaguar. Soon, news of the great jaguar spirit reached the ears of the king and high priests. The king was furious, demanding immediate revenge. But the high priest knew better. The jungle was a powerful force that demanded respect. They sacrificed a bull at the base of the pyramid, praying for the protection of the jungle gods and asking for guidance. And when the leaves rustled in response, the high priest smiled. He understood the jungle was guiding them to the true source of the curse. "Your journey is far from over," he told X. "It seems the curse comes from another dimension, a cursed place where a powerful lord rules." "But why? Why did the gods send you there?" Just then, the Quetzal bird dropped another feather at their feet, and the priest recognized the unique pattern on it. This feather must have come from the holy bird, the messenger of the gods. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "A shooting star fell last night. Could it be the gods are showing us the way?" The year is 790 AD. 3 months have passed since Kukulkan revealed the prophecy to his daughter. Every day Ixtil has visited the incense burner of time, praying that her father's face would appear among the ancestral flames. But there was no reply, only silence. Just as Kukulkan had foretold, the connection to the ancestors had been severed. Now, beneath the shade of the great jaguar tree, they prepared for the worst. "This drought, it seems endless," said Itsum, the rain priestess, nervously twisting her necklace of jade skulls. Her gaze was fixed on the withered maize plant in front of her, its dry leaves rustling listlessly in the wind. For 6 months, the sky had not wept over Tickle. Without rain, the fields were turning to dust. The reservoirs were drying up. Farmers spoke of selling their children to the slave markets, while merchants whispered of fleeing to safer cities. Even the royal court was considering abandoning the kingdom. Such was the gravity of the situation that the king himself had gone to the Serpent Temple, the domain of the feathered serpent god, to pray for rain. But the only reply he got was a mocking echo. X still remained seated calmly, listening to the murmurs around her. She had indeed consulted the oracles, but instead of foretelling disaster, her own vision had been clear and unwavering. She saw herself uniting with a man, a stranger, actually, under the light of the new moon. And when their blood mingled, the sky would weep tears of life. That vision, that prophecy had become an obsession for her. All she could think about was finding the mysterious stranger, the lone warrior, so that the sacred seed could be reborn. However, her father, the high priest, did not share her zeal. Since the revelation of the prophecy, Kukulkan had kept to his chambers, emerging only to perform rituals or utter prayers. It was as if he were trying to bargain with the gods. Meanwhile, the kingdom teetered on the brink of ruin. The priests, along with King Yaknum Tuk, were convinced that Tickle was cursed. One day, amidst the mounting chaos, Ixchel found her father near the incense burner of time. Its flames flickered feebly, barely illuminating the hieroglyphic staircase leading to the celestial realm. She knew what her father was doing. He was making one last, desperate attempt to connect with their ancestors. "Father," she said softly, approaching him. Kukulkan looked up, his eyes still bearing the weight of ages past. "Exchel, you have walked the path of wisdom. You know the importance of the incense burner of time. Can you not feel the fading flame within it? Do you not sense the absence of our ancestors?" She did feel it, but she also saw something else in her father's face. Defeat. "Father, we cannot wait for guidance from the gods. We must act ourselves. Do you not feel the strength surging through my veins? It is destiny calling, urging me to act." Kukulkan shook his head sadly. "You mistake divine will for personal ambition, child. Destiny can wait. The seed doesn't need to sprout right away. And what about the people, Father? Their suffering could end our dynasty here and now. Are you willing to gamble with Tickle's future? What if the oracles of the Snake Temple are correct? What if this is the end of our bloodline?" Kukulkan fell silent. His gaze drifted back to the fading flames. Finally, he sighed, resigned. "Very well, go. But first, you must listen to me carefully. The visions you received are signs, not commands. You are not merely a pawn of fate. You retain free will. Whatever happens, do not surrender your soul." He looked at her intently, his eyes filled with both love and warning. "Do you understand?" Extel hesitated for a moment, then bowed her head in affirmation. That night, under the silver glow of the new moon, armed with her father's blessings, Extel set out to find the lone warrior whose lineage could save Tickle. She left the city through the north gate, following a dirt road lined with tall ceiba trees. Every few steps, she paused, pressing her ear against the rough bark of a tree, as if listening for something. Then she continued on, disappearing into the darkness. Meanwhile, deep in the jungles of the Itza Maya, far from the troubled city of Tico, lived a young man named Kan. He had returned from a recent battle with a new trophy. A captive. Strangely enough, it wasn't a human prisoner, but a jaguar, the largest the locals had ever seen, its coat as black as midnight. Kan placed the jaguar in a pit in the courtyard of his house, intending to train it for future hunts. But the next morning, he found the animal missing. Not a single trace of the jaguar was to be found, as if it had vanished into thin air. A few hours later, while he was practicing with his wooden sword, a message arrived from the city of Tickle. The messenger delivered the king's summons to Kan to come to the capital as soon as possible. There was no explanation for the king's sudden request, which puzzled Kan. He couldn't recall having offended King Yuknum-Tuk. In fact, he had proven himself a loyal and valiant soldier in the king's service. As Kan led his men towards Tickle, he heard rumors of a terrible curse upon the city. Some spoke of famine, others of a vengeful deity. Despite these tales, when Kan entered Tickle, he saw no sign of decay. It was a bright, cloudless day. The bazaars were full of people and goods, and the streets teemed with life. Only the lack of birdsong made the scene seem eerie. Kan went straight to the royal palace, where he was received by the king himself. Yuknum-Tuk was visibly distraught. As soon as Kan entered, the king began speaking rapidly. "Prince Kan, I have heard tales of your bravery and skill, which is why I have summoned you. Our great city is dying. Drought and famine have come upon us, and the gods seem deaf to our prayers. I fear a great catastrophe is imminent." Before Kan could respond, a priest entered and announced that the sacrificial rites had been completed. The king and Kan went together to the temple of the feathered serpent god. Standing before the altar, the king poured out his anguish to the god, begging for salvation from the impending famine. When the king finished his prayer, he turned to Kan and said, "Now it is your turn, brave warrior. Pray for our people, for Tickle's future." Kan stepped forward, but what was he to say? He was a warrior, not a priest. Moreover, he had no faith in these rituals. Yet there was no other way. So he did as the king had asked. But his prayer was brief and to the point. He prayed for the strength to protect Tickle and its people, to fight any enemy who dared threaten the city. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a voice. It was soft yet resonant, like the tinkling of a mountain spring. "There is another way to save Tickle, a solution that does not require the god's mercy or a warrior's strength. All eyes turned to the entrance. There stood a young woman bathed in a pool of golden sunlight. Behind her, the gateway seemed to shimmer, as if the very heavens were shining. It was then that Ken noticed something unusual. The woman was holding a vase made of human bones. Curiosity overcame Ken. He stepped forward. "Who are you? How can you save Tickle?" The woman descended the stairs, followed by her retinue. "My name is Extil, and I am here to fulfill a prophecy." Extil. And Ken met for the first time in front of the assembled lords and priests. Looking into his dark eyes, she saw neither arrogance nor disrespect, only concern for the suffering people. She realized that he was not the arrogant prince spoken of in the prophecy. He was simply Ken, a man wrestling with his responsibilities. Over the next few days, Extel spent most of her time in the city, meeting with officials and organizing relief efforts. Ken accompanied her everywhere, acting as her protector. Along the way, they shared stories about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Slowly, an unexpected bond grew between them. The more Ken learned about Exchila, the more he admired her kindness and intelligence. And when he saw how she cared for the sick and the needy, he felt a growing affection for her. In private conversations, however, Exchil often pondered the meaning of her visions. She had seen Ken as a vessel for the divine seed, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to their connection. Maybe the prophecy wasn't just about fulfilling a destiny, but about uniting two hearts. Maybe the gods had chosen them for something greater than either of them could imagine. Then, one day, while walking through the deserted marketplace, their hands brushed against each other. Startled, they both pulled away, their eyes meeting. In that instant, all thoughts of duty, prophecy, and responsibility vanished. All that remained was the undeniable attraction between them, as the moonlight painted silver streaks across the ground. Their lips met, sealing a bond that transcended bloodlines and fulfilled an ancient prophecy. Ken stood up, his muscles tensed. For a moment, he was ready to draw his sword and cut off this insolent girl's head. But he didn't. Instead, he asked himself, is it possible that the prophecy about the dry well isn't true? After all, the gods wouldn't abandon Tickle, would they? But the fear in his gut told him otherwise. This night, the entire kingdom could crumble and turn into a lifeless desert, a graveyard for their glory. To be honest, he had never paid much attention to these obscure prophecies. Sure, sometimes they came true, but most often, they just made people cower in fear, cowering in their homes. Such nights seemed distant, legendary, a kind of fairy tale. And now here he was, a prince who had grown up in battle, whose heart didn't tremble at the sight of bloodshed, being forced to consider prophecies in ancient caves. His generals would probably laugh at such thoughts, but he couldn't afford not to take them seriously. What did this dry well have to do with the fate of the kingdom? Ken decided to find out. He went down the many steps of the pyramid, ignoring the surprised glances of the soldiers who didn't understand where their young and daring leader was going. He found his horse by the gate and climbed onto its back. Then he followed the princess. Side by side, two figures rode across the jungle plain, each lost in thought. Soon the towering walls of Tickle became invisible behind the tall trees. They stopped by a stream gurgling over moss-covered stones. And here the girl stopped and turned to him. "It's here," she said, pointing to the thicket ahead. Ken nodded. Now the fear in his gut was gone, replaced by anticipation. What if the prophecy turns out to be true? He thought. Suddenly, they heard a rustle in the bushes. The branches swayed. Something or someone quickly climbed up the tree and disappeared among the leaves. "A jaguar," Ken muttered. The beast chose this place as its home for a reason. As they ventured deeper into the undergrowth, the air grew chilly and damp. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above, casting flickering shadows on the ground. Lush green vines hung like thick ropes from tree to tree. Finally, they came across a huge rock monolith half hidden by creepers. Its surface was covered with intricate carvings, and Ken felt the power emanating from this ancient stone. Not understanding the symbols depicted on it, he nevertheless sensed their importance. Could this be the entrance to the cave mentioned by the seer? Ken touched the cool stone, feeling a strange energy surge through his body. With a loud creak, a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a gaping opening. An earthy smell wafted from the depths of the cave. Stepping aside, Ken gestured for the princess to go first. The princess didn't seem afraid. With calm steps, she descended into the dark opening. The last rays of daylight illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air, giving a sense of vastness and mystery to the subterranean space. The tunnel was quite long, and after a while, Ken noticed that Excel had stopped. He caught up with her and asked, "What's wrong?" But she wasn't looking at him. She was staring straight ahead. Ken followed her gaze and noticed 3 figures standing ahead, illuminated by an eerie glow. Each of them was adorned with a feathered headdress and a necklace of jade. Their skin was painted in vibrant colors, and they held spears tipped with sharp obsidian. "Who are you?" Ken demanded, drawing his sword. One of the figures stepped forward, and Ken gasped. It was Itsam, the high priest of Tickle, whom he had summoned earlier that day. "How is this possible?" he asked, bewildered. Itsam smiled mysteriously and replied, "You called us, Ken." "I didn't call anyone," Ken retorted, confused. "You did," corrected another priestess, her voice surprisingly deep. "We heard your prayers and arrived to help you." "Help me," Ken repeated, bewildered. Suddenly, the 3rd priestess stepped forward. "We can show you the future," she said, holding out her hand. Ken hesitated, his fingers hovering over the hilt of his sword. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. But ultimately, curiosity got the better of him. He took the priestess's hand and felt a jolt shoot through him. The world around him dissolved into a kaleidoscope of colors. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a vast cavern filled with an ethereal glow. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and water trickled down their sides. In the center stood a pool reflecting the otherworldly light. The priests stood silently beside him, their faces unreadable. "What does it mean?" Ken whispered, his gaze fixed on the pool. The priestess stepped closer to the pool and dipped her hand into the water. "Everything depends on your choice," she said, turning to Kane. Kane stared at the rippling surface of the water. There, he saw 2 paths stretching out before him. The first path was strewn with gold coins and precious gems. At the end of it, he saw a magnificent city. Palaces glittered in the sunlight, and the people cheered and celebrated. But as he took a closer look, he noticed a dark cloud hanging over the city. The faces of the people were twisted in pain, and their laughter sounded hollow. The second path was much darker. Torches flickered along it, casting ominous shadows on the walls. Ken saw battles, death, and destruction. People cried out in terror, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. But as he moved further along the path, he noticed that the flames of the torches gradually began to fade, revealing the faces of the people. They looked peaceful, and the cries of anguish faded into whispers. Ken turned to the priests. "Which path should I choose?" he asked. The priests exchanged glances, and after a moment, one of them spoke. "The choice is yours, Ken. The path of gold will bring you fame and fortune, but at what cost? The path of fire will lead to suffering and loss, but will also bring peace." Ken pondered their words, his gaze darting between the 2 paths. Which one did Ixa choose? He wondered, looking at her, but she was staring intently at the ground, and Ken couldn't tell what she was thinking. Suddenly, she straightened up and addressed the priests. "We thank you for your guidance, but we will decide our own fate," she declared. The priests nodded silently and vanished into the shadows, leaving Ken and Exel alone in the cavern. Ken turned to the princess. "What do you see?" he asked softly. "Only darkness," she whispered. Ken fell silent. He thought about the 2 paths, about the price of easy victories, and about the meaning of his existence. His gaze met Ixel's, and in her eyes, he saw an understanding and support. Together, they decided to return to Tickle. As they walked, Ken realized that he didn't need prophecies or visions to see the future. He had his own path to follow, and he would walk it with his head held high. Ken awoke gasping, drenched in sweat. The humid jungle night pressed against him, buzzing with unseen life. For a moment, he saw the lake, felt the tingle of energy on his skin, heard the whispering hope in Extel's voice, but it was gone. Only the rhythmic chirping of crickets marked the passing time. Disoriented, he looked around. The fire from the night before had burned low, leaving smoldering embers. He was alone. No sign of Ichikal or the others. He pushed himself up, wincing as his sore muscles protested. Where were they? Had it been a dream? Was that real or imagined? Around him, the jungle seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting. And there in the center of the clearing, where he had dreamed of a subterranean lake, found only the remains of a shallow puddle. The stones were there, but they could have been arranged by any wandering tribe. No trace of the carvings or symbols. There was no sign of Ikakul's village either. What had been a small clearing was now encircled by tall grasses and thorny vines, as if nature itself wanted to erase it from memory. Fear clawed at Can. Had the jungle rejected them? Had the prophecy failed? Desperation welled up. Now, more than ever, he had to find her. Needed to know what had happened. He forced aside the overgrowth, stepping into the tangled foliage. Each step deeper into the forest seemed to pull at his resolve, testing his faith in the fading vision. He called out, his voice echoing unanswered in the dense undergrowth. Had he made a mistake? Trusting X-Chill, following her into the unknown heart of the jungle? Was this how the prophecy would end? Lost and alone? Time slipped by, measured only by the relentless sun and the growing despair in his chest. Just when his hope started to dwindle, he saw movement. Tall, lithe figures, cloaked in emerald green, emerged from behind ancient trees. Their faces painted with white and blue, adorned with feathers, held spears tipped with obsidian. The Maya warriors. They had found him. Relief flooded Can. At least he wouldn't face this alone. Together, they would uncover what the jungle had shown him. Hope surged back, stronger than ever. Can followed them, each step taking him deeper into the forest's embrace, closer to the destiny that awaited him. They traveled 3 days deeper into the jungle before reaching another clearing. In the center stood a pyramid of rough-hewn limestone blocks, covered with creeping vines and crowned with a wooden temple. The sight sent a jolt of energy through him. This wasn't just any sight. Here, spiritual power crackled in the air. Birds fell silent. Insects hushed their buzz. All watched as Ken approached the steps leading to the temple entrance. But upon reaching the top, he realized the entrance was sealed. Large stones blocked away, forming a barrier that defied entry. Disappointment threatened to overwhelm him, but Ken refused to give in. He remembered Ixchel's words. The prophecy spoke of trials, of challenges that tested one's spirit. He turned to the Maya warriors. There must be another way, he stated, more to convince himself than them. And there it was, barely noticeable, a narrow opening concealed behind hanging vines. Passing through, they descended into darkness. The tunnel opened into a spacious chamber. Inside, shadows danced on the walls, illuminated by a faint green glow emanating from crevices in the rocks. Carved in the center was a large circular doorway framed by 2 stone pillars. The glyphs, depicting the hands exchanging the seedling, were identical to those found at the altar in the underground cavern. But now, in this hidden chamber, they pulsed with a vibrant green light. Ken hesitated, sensing the spiritual significance of the place, feeling the weight of generations past watching him. Was this the final test? Taking a deep breath, he reached out and touched the glyphs. As soon as his fingers made contact, the room erupted in light. Colors exploded in a dazzling display, filling the chamber and spilling out into the connecting tunnels, pushing him forward. Emerging from the opening, he found himself in a large, airy space. Sunlight streamed through a hole in the roof, illuminating a vast chamber filled with people. Hundreds of men, women, and children sat, cross-legged, eyes closed in meditation. Startled by the sudden intrusion, they all opened their eyes, staring intently at him. In the front row sat several elders, their faces lined with age, their eyes twinkling with wisdom. Among them, Ken saw familiar faces, the Maya warriors who had led him here. They gestured for him to join them. Ken stepped forward, bowing his head in respect to the elders. The moment stretched, thick with anticipation. Finally, one of the elders spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "You have journeyed far, Ken. You have faced many trials to reach this place." Ken looked around at the expectant faces, humbled by the gravity of the moment. "What is it you seek here?" the elder asked, his gaze unwavering. "I seek the hidden wisdom, the knowledge to save my people from destruction." The elder nodded slowly. "Then listen well, for I shall share with you the prophecy spoken by the ancestors, the prophecy that brought you here." The prophecy told of a great flood that would cover the earth, destroying everything in its path. but amidst the destruction, a single leaf would float on the water, carrying within it the essence of life, the promise of renewal. This leaf would travel across the land until it found fertile ground on which to rest. From this leaf, new life would spring forth, restoring balance to the world. But how does this prophecy aid us now? Ken questioned, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. The leaf, Ken, is the seed that you have awakened, the elder revealed, his voice resonating with power. Its power has returned, drawn back into this sacred place, waiting for the Chosen One to lead it to safety. Ken frowned. Chosen One? I don't understand! The elder rose, his eyes shining with wisdom. You are the Chosen One, Ken, the vessel through which the seed will be reborn. Your destiny is to guide the leaf to the place where it can begin anew. Confusion clouded Ken's features. But I am just a simple farmer. How can I fulfill such a great task? Because you carry within you the spirit of the jaguar, the strength of the eagle, and the wisdom of the earth, the elder affirmed, placing a hand on Ken's shoulder. You have shown courage, resilience, and a pure heart. These are the qualities that make you the Chosen One. The weight of the elder's words settled upon Ken, heavy with responsibility. He looked out at the expectant faces of his people, their hopes and fears resting on his shoulders. Could he, a humble farmer, rise to meet this challenge? They had journeyed to the past, back to when the land was new and the gods walked among men. Here, deep in the heart of the jungle, away from the corruption of empires, they had found the purest remaining vestige of the ancients, the last guardian of forgotten wisdom. And now before them stood the legendary feathered serpent god, Quetzalcoatl. For a moment, Ken could only stare, speechless. There were no chains or prisons here. So why did his limbs feel so heavy? Why was it so difficult to even lift his head? He wanted to speak, to ask questions, but his mouth felt dry, like it hadn't moved in weeks. Quetzalcoatl spoke again, his voice echoing with ages. Do you understand now what your role is? Why you were brought here? I need your help to return to the physical world. To do that, I must be reborn. I require a vessel, a human host. Your companion is worthy. She carries the blood of the ancients. She is a descendant of the royal line that once served as my conduit. Extel shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I am sorry, great God, but I will never abandon my people. Even if I can save your life, I will not forsake those who follow me. There will be time enough for that later, Quetzalcoatl replied. For now, you must put aside your compassion. If you truly seek to honor the gods, let it begin with listening and learning. Open your eyes, descendant of the moon goddess, and watch. I shall show you what it means to walk the path of balance. The world is in peril. The old ways have failed. You cannot save everyone, but you can save some. Sometimes to save one life is enough. He gazed at Ken and you. Son of darkness, you who wield the power to bring death, show respect to the one who brings life. Kneel before the bearer of light. Let this be the beginning of your atonement. Though his body resisted, Ken dropped to his knees, unable to defy the presence before him. Never had he felt such conflicting emotions. Dread, disbelief, and a stirring of curiosity that he couldn't ignore. Quetzalcoatl extended a hand towards the young man, his touch surprisingly gentle. Visions flooded Ken's mind, not forced upon him, but offered, beckoning him to reach out and take hold. Images of distant lands, of jungles and mountains, of bustling cities and humble villages, of people engaged in daily lives, of wars and famines, of temples and rituals, of a world teeming with life and shadowed by suffering. But above it all, one image burned with eternal brilliance. The seed, a small, unassuming seed, nurtured by sunlight and rain, growing into a strong tree, offering shade and fruit. Ken gasped, his heart pounding in his chest. What did it mean? He didn't know, but there was something irresistibly compelling about it, drawing him in like a moth to a flame. This was more real than the life he had known, more true than anything he had believed. And yet it was just a dream, wasn't it? A hallucination brought on by the jungle and his own tormented mind. How could any of this be real? Why would the god of the ancients choose this forsaken place for his awakening? And why had he come to Mayan, a mere soldier, a pawn in a game he didn't understand? Still kneeling, he looked up at Quetzalcoatl, his eyes shining with newfound determination. Whether dream or reality, this vision had awakened something deep within him, a longing for a world he couldn't remember, a world he knew he had to try and save.